Hey and welcome back to another Darkfall tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at how to create this gloomy looking cave scene. So we're only going to be working on the cave. The objects themselves will be added in later on. If you want to see how they were made, there's a speed modeling video. You can go and check that out. So what we want to do is align the camera by pressing numpad 1, Control Alt numpad 0 to align it to view. So now we can go ahead and add in our first object, which we're going to do Shift A and add in a cylinder, which is going to act as the cave. So we want to rotate this by pressing RX90. Okay, so we can scale this up, and we're not being deadly accurate. If you were working for a client or in a game, something like that, you might want to be completely accurate, but we're just going to scale this up by what we think looks good. So I also want to scale this on the Y as well. We just want to position it right about here, so the camera is just on the inside. We press Tab to go into edit mode, and we face select. We can select this face here, and this one as well. We don't need them, so we can just press X, delete faces. Okay, so I'm going to probably need a different view, so let's split this window. And if we hovered on this side, if we press Control numpad 0, sorry, if we press numpad 0, not Control numpad 0, press numpad 0, it'll align the camera so we can see what the camera sees. And then this other side can be whatever view you want. Okay, so the idea now is we're going to add some geometry here, some basic curves, so the tunnel or the cave doesn't look too straight. So first thing we can do is flip the normals. We see the shading's completely, well, it's on the outside, but now it's on the inside. And you can tell by looking at the shading, it just looks different and wrong. If you can't tell how the shading looks, if you press N, bring up this sidebar here. Actually, we need to probably go into edit mode, so tab to edit mode. And then what you want to do down in mesh display, I think it is. Yeah, mesh display, and then down here, click this button here. We still don't see anything, so we need to increase this size. And we see these green points, these green spikes, and that indicates which way the normals are pointing. So normally it's this way. Obviously you want the normals on the outside when using the cylinder. But for this example, we want to flip the normals, so the shading is perfect for us. Okay, so yeah, let's get rid of that. We don't need to see that anymore. Okay, so again, you get used to how it looks. You can tell this shading is different from on the inside, so you'll get used to that as well. So let's add in some loop cuts by pressing Ctrl R and then scrolling the middle mouse wheel up. We don't want to add too many loop cuts, just enough. So this should be fine. And if we press numpad 7, then numpad 5, we get a better view of it all. And what I want to do is just select some of these rings, and if we press O, or click this button here and enable proportional editing, it'll give us much better results when we move the things around. So if we hold Alt and right click, we can select a ring like this, and if we scroll up middle mouse wheel, and it will increase the influence of the faces around it, or decrease it depending on the result that you're looking for. So I'm just going to move these around a little bit. Also, don't be afraid to go up and down on the Z, so the more the variation there is, the better it will look. So you don't want to put too much in, but just enough. If you're having trouble like I am now trying to select a ring, just zoom in, then hold Alt, and then right click. Let's also scale this up a bit. Again, this is all down to your preference, how you want your cave to look. This is just I guess the base geometry. We're going to add some more geometry onto it later on with displacements and the bumps, so we don't need to worry about it too much, but we just want to get a nice shape for us. And just select faces, just single faces, and then drag them out. And again, this is entirely up to you how it looks, how you think your cave should look. Just going to drag this out. What I like to do is drag it out like here, and it looks as if the cave splits off and goes around somewhere else. And when we add some mist later on, it will really stand out and look good. So putting little things like that in will help. We also maybe drag this down as well on the Z, so it gives a sloping look to the roof. That's pretty cool as well. It's a nice little effect. So again, just finding things that look nice and the way you want it to. Just go through it all. I'm going to add in a little an embankment maybe, or somewhere we can put in a treasure chest, I guess, something like this. So it's all about taking your time and finding something that looks good. If it doesn't look good, change it. You know, you're not committed to anything right now, you can keep changing it. I think that looks okay for now, so let's go ahead and we can add in a floor. So let's just move this over, and this is really easy to do, so we just tab back into edit mode, and what we want to do is select one of these row of faces. So if we make sure we're in face select mode, and if we click right click here, and then if we hold Alt and right click right next to it here like this, we can select this row of faces. And in fact, let's select this one instead. Now if we hold Control and hit numpad plus, we can increase the selection. So maybe something like this, and if you want to increase it, if you want to add something to it, you can just keep pressing up or down while holding Control. But yeah, let's say we want to add this ring of hair. If we hold if we hold Shift and then Alt and right click, we can add or deselect a ring of faces. So it's just about getting used to the tools as well. It's a helpful, handy little tool, but you probably end up using a lot. So let's extrude this down, and then extrude it down again, and then scale. And then we want to scale it on the X. So it just gives it a bit more as if it bends back into itself. We could separate these faces now, but I'm going to come back and do that in a minute. I just want to clean up some of these faces here. We can see when we extruded it out, with this messed up here. So I just need to go to face select mode. So we're already in face select mode, and just select these faces here. And this is at the front of the tunnel, so if we zoom in, we can see it's just like a row of faces we don't need. So delete them, and probably these faces as well. These look like we can delete as well, yeah. Okay, so the floor is all the way out here. That's not too bad. We can leave that there. It's okay. What I do want to do though is move the position of the tunnel as well. So let's just select this ring. If we press numpad 3, we can go to the side view. In fact, let's just select one edge with edge select mode. Should have done this in the first place, so I'm sorry about that. So select this edge here. Go back to numpad 3 side view. Make sure proportional editing is turned on by pressing O, and if we scroll this up while dragging this back, it'll look more like a cave. So when the light comes in, it won't look flat, it'll look quite nice. Something like that should be okay. And again, I want to scale this down, so if I select this ring of this ring here, and just scale it down, that should be good. I also want to drag this down. It looks like it's coming up, even though it's not. I'm just going to drag this down anyway. And again, we probably won't even see this when the water comes on top of it, and with all the effects and compositing, we probably won't even see this far anyway. Okay, so we've got the floor done. We've got the, well, we need to separate this now, so let's just again select this floor. Just select this row of faces by pressing Alt and right clicking. Then Control numpad plus, select the ones we need, and now if we hit P, and then parent by selection, and then press tab to go out of that, we can see we've got two objects now, which is the floor and the cave, which is exactly what I want. So we're just going to join that window, so we're just working on this one now. Okay, so what you want to do is go through, I'm not really happy with the shape, I want to add some more geometry and make it look a little bit better. So you go ahead now and make some more adjustments, make it look more, make it look a lot better than what it is. So I'm just going to do this in time lapse and get back to you when I've finished it, so you don't have to wait around with me messing with things. Okay, so this is the final thing that the final object that I came up with. So as you see, there's nothing much different. I did smooth shading, so if you want to change it from flat shading to smooth shading, you can do that. But everything's basically the same, it's just a little bit different. I just want to align the camera now, so we select the camera and just move it around. Again, you can align the camera any way you want, Shift F, if you want to go into sort of first person camera view, or align the camera however you want. I want to align it so the wall here to the left is right close to the camera, so when we add some focal blur, it'll look really nice. So I'm just trying to get this a little bit closer to that wall here. So there'll be some blur right in front of the object, and there'll be some blur right at the back. It'll look quite nice compositing wise. So let's just drag this over a bit more. Yeah, something like that should do. I mean, you don't want to spend all day trying to pick a camera angle. Obviously, if you are working for a project or a client, or even for yourself, you might want to take longer, but since this is a tutorial, I don't want to take all day. So let's go with something like this. Let's add a new material and call this cave walls, and do the same for the floor, except call this maybe sand floor, like so. And we will be using some displace modifiers for both of these objects. So let's just go back to the cave wall. We'll be focusing on this, and then we can go back later on and worry about the sand. Okay, so make sure you apply the scale and the rotation, because you want to unwrap the object. So you can unwrap that. Let's just change this window to the node editor. Just change this to material, and what we're going to be doing is Shift A. If we go down to texture, and we're going to add in an image texture. This is just going to be a basic rock texture. You can get this from, download any kind of rock texture you want. I download this one from CG Textures. There'll be a link in the description. So just add that one in here, and plug this in. Again, we're just going to use a simple diffuse texture right now, or we'll come back in a moment and change it for a PBR texture or something different. Let's unwrap this. You can either do it by unwrap or smart UV projection. I actually did smart UV projection already, so let's just change this over to here. Again, it's not a perfect wrap, it's quite horrible, but for the example it actually doesn't make a difference. So let's just change this to the image. So I'll show you what the image is. It's just this rock texture here. Pretty simple. So when you unwrap your wall, you might want to scale it up, maybe scale it on the X as well. Just make it look nice. Yeah, you want to make it look something proportionally nice. Again, I just want to move this camera a little bit. I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep moving it. I should just leave it. Something like this. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, so make sure you save it as well, especially when we add some displace modifiers. So it depends on your computer as well. You might want to save it a lot. Okay, so let's focus on this texture. We can delete this diffuse texture, but we need to append in some other texture, some other materials or other shaders that you've previously made. So if you've saved any of these shaders, you want to append them in now. If not, you just want to make a basic mix shader, which you've probably made hundreds of times before. I'm just going to plug this in now and just going to bump up this roughness, and I'll come back later on and tweak these values. But we're not worrying about that right now, we're just worrying about the displacement. So this displacement, we're just going to be using the same image. It would help if you had different images for each different thing, but I'm just going to use the same image. I'm just come over here to the modifier tab with the cave selected, and let's give this, let's first give this a subdivision surface modifier. Let's just change this back to solid view. What we want to do, we want to make a few changes here. If we come down to, well, we want to change this from supported to experimental. Then we come back to the modifier. Now we can change this to simple, and we check this here, this adaptive. Make sure it's at levels 1 is fine as well. Also, with this adaptive rendering, and make sure you check experimental. Here under geometry, which is under sampling, we need to change this here, this renders from 1 pixel to something higher, maybe like the preview here at 8. So let's change this from 1 to 8. If we had this at 1, unless you've got a really amazing computer, it'll probably run out of memory before it even starts rendering. So set this to 8 pixels and everything should be fine. Okay, so anything else we need to change light paths. What we can do is we can get rid of reflective and refractive caustics. Don't need them. Also, just reduce all these values here to give you a faster render. You can always come back later on and increase the values depending on what you need. If you've got transparency with the water or anything else that you want to add, so you can come back later on and increase them as you need to. Okay, what else? Anything else we can change while we're here? We come to the modifier. Yeah, we can add the displacement modifier now. Down to displace. So that the subsurface on the bottom and displace is on the top. Okay, so let's select a new texture. and we can change the coordinates, texture coordinates from local to UV, and if you want you can select the UV map there as well. Okay, so we want to apply the texture to this, so we click this button here, it will take us straight to the texture panel, so it saves us going to the texture panel ourselves. Okay, so what we're going to do is give it the texture we're already using for the colour, so we select that button there and select the colour. Okay, so now we want to go back to the modifiers and reduce the strength down to say something 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, something like that, anything you want. But you just want quite a low value. So this displacement modifier is just giving us the generalized bumps, the big massive geometry bumps. We will be putting the displacement through the textures and then also add in some bumps as well. So yeah, just make sure you're happy with everything. Again, we're not looking for anything impressive or anything incredible right now, we just want basic bumps. So we change this back to material. What we can do is just get rid of this here, change this to white. So I'm just unplugging the textures just so we can see things a little bit better. Sometimes the textures get in the way and make you think you see things when you don't. So we plug this straight into the displacement as well. View saturation. So we can see how this is looking. We want to reduce down this saturation to 0. Shift A, color, and we, in fact now, Shift A, converter, and color ramp. We're just going to mess around with these values here. Something like this. We're going to crunch these, the blacks and the whites. And then also, then we can also, with the black selected here, let's just choose this color and give it a bit more of a grey value, so it's not too black. Something like this. Again, if you have different texture, if you have a spec map, or if you have a displacement map or a height map, go ahead and use them. But I'm just using the single image to create that for us. Okay, Shift A, we can add in converter math. And then I'm going to change this from add to multiply. We can set this to probably somewhere around 1, maybe 1 or 2 or 3. Depends on the overall look you want. Okay, also in the materials we want to come down under settings, we want to change this here, this displacement method to true, because it gives a little bit better results. Okay, make sure you apply the rotation scale if you already haven't done that. And also you got to press, sometimes if you press tab twice, it'll update the geometry for you. So I don't know if that's a bug or I guess it saves on memory or something, I don't know. Anyway, so these are the textures we've got so far. We want to make sure that the your mix shader or your diffuse shader, whatever it is plugged into the surface, and everything else is plugged into the displacement for now. Okay, so we also want to add in a bump node. And if we plug the color value from our texture into the height, and then this is normals going into our PBR texture. Essentially it's a diffuse, a glossy mixed with Fresnel. So that's being plugged into them too. So as you can see, as soon as we do that, we've got a large scale bump. We can see that the bump makes it look a lot better. So if we reduce this down to say 0.09, 0.09 or maybe less. Playing around with these values, depending on the scene, will give you a lot of different results. So just keep playing with it until you find something that works for you. That looks fine. Okay, so I'm going to plug this color now back in here so we can see the texture. So we've got the texture, we've got the small bumps, we've got the displacement, and we've got the large bumps as well. So I've just been tweaking the textures. I just made a spec map for it as well, so it's the same thing as we had before, just a few little tweaks. So as you can see from one image, we're using the color, using it for the specularity, and we're also using it for the displacement. Okay, so make sure you plug your bump into the normal as well. So these nodes here, it's just going to change the color of our texture. So right now we see the texture is this color, and it's plugged into this node, which is, yeah, and all these are doing is just changing it so it looks a little more green, a little more like a cave that's had water in it. So that's all that nodes are doing. So it's pretty much the same nodes as before, except it's a little color changing, and also one to affect the specularity. So it's pretty much the same nodes as before. And that's going to be the same for the sand as well. It's going to be the exact same. So we can go ahead now and copy the same one and then paste it over. Again, I'm going to speed this part up because it's exactly the same as before. We just have it using the same nodes. Okay, so since we've copied those nodes over, we just need to make a few adjustments. First of all, we need to change the texture. So let's get rid of that one. And I've already added in the texture. It's just a basic sand one. Again, you can get that from CG Textures. Add that in, and also make sure you unwrap the plane. So again, if you want to just unwrap it, or UV unwrap, smart UV unwrap, you can do whatever you want. So let's plug this straight in here because we don't need this. All these nodes are just changing the color, and that was for the rock texture. We don't need it for this one. We do need the bumps that can stay. So if we in fact, we don't even need the bump. If we mute it, we're probably not even going to see the sand, and this is for fine details. We will have a large displacement modifier, so large bumps. So we add a displacement modifier. Let's just set this to UV. So we can see we're going to have, make sure you unwrap it as well. So UV unwrap, smart UV project is that's the one I did. We can set the strength to something small, maybe 0.5 or something like that. Then we can click this button here, or go over to the texture panel, and we want to add in the sand texture we've just been using for the colour. And we can see already it's given us some large scale bumps, which is exactly what we want. So we don't need any roughness, because it's going to be completely rough, I guess. It's sand underwater. Maybe 0.8, just give it a little bit. And we can delete these since we don't need them. This here we can use, we just plug that straight into the displacement. So we can see that it's looking displaced, it's looking nice and, yeah, looks like it's really there. It's more bumps and more geometry. So this displacement here, unless we're very close to it, you see how distorted and how bumpy it is. Unless the camera's right close to it, I don't think we'll actually see it, so I'm going to get rid of that as well. Depends if you need it, you use it. If you don't, there's no point having it there. So now we can go Shift A and add in a plane. This is going to be our water. Again, this water is going to have a displacement texture as well, but it's going to be just a simple cloud texture. And that's just going to help with the reflections and everything else that's going on in the scene. So yeah, make sure it's not too large, just scale it down. Okay, so something like this. And we want to make sure we're going to position the height of it, and you can have it as high or as low as you want. Sometimes it looks cool with the sand just peeking over the top. Sometimes it's cool with just not seeing any sand at all. So it all depends on the scene that you're trying to create as well. So I guess that's entirely up to you as well. Again, make sure you save this now a lot because you're using modifiers. We are using the adaptive rendering, so it helps with the rendering, but it can still slow down things, especially with the size of this tunnel. I'm just going to change the colour of this. This is a glass texture for the water. It's simple. The IOR is going to be 1.333, since that's what water is. The colour of it's not going to be a big deal, so I'm just going to tint it a little bit. Okay, so what else do we want to do? Yeah, don't worry about the outside here. The outside looks terrible, but we're not even looking at that. We're going to be focusing on the inside, which looks nice. So don't worry about the outside. What else do we need? Let's see. Like I say, what we can do is add some lamps. So Shift A, go down to lamps, and we're going to add in a sun lamp. So the positioning of the camera of the lamp doesn't really matter. It's the direction of the beam is what we're looking for. So when we move it over here, it's not going to make a difference. But when we rotate it on the X, the position of this beam is where the light's going to be pointing. So we want this to be pointing right down down the tunnel, because this is going to be our main light source. Something like this. Again, it doesn't matter where you position it, X, Y, Z. I'm just doing it here so we can get an idea of where the beams are pointing. So that looks fine. I'm going to make sure the multiple importance is checked. I'm going to change this size later on. The colour, I'm going to give this a nice blue colour, and bump up the strength to something like 1.2 maybe. And then I want to create another light for the back, since we need some backlighting as well. So I'm going to Shift D, duplicate this, rotate on the Z 180 degrees so it's facing the opposite way. And just bring this up a bit so you can see them both. And we see that right now they're both the same, except one's in the opposite direction. So this one here, let's just rotate it a little bit on the X and on the Z as well. And let's change this colour to something more orange. And we want to take the strength down to say 0.6 maybe. Maybe even something lower later on. We just need to see how this looks. That's just a guess for now. Okay, we also want in the lighting for the world. So we can come here, use nodes. If you want, you can use an environment texture. So you just come here to environment texture. But for right now, I'm just going to use a sky texture. And then at the end, I'll go back and change it for an environment texture. Okay, so these are pretty cool, this sky texture if you've never used one before. I just first want to increase this to say 1.7, maybe 1.9. Yeah, so if you want to use this, you just grab it and click wherever you want to position it. And the more you position it to the left, the more the sun's going to appear from the left. You can go ahead and play with that, find something that you like. But I want something a bit green at the bottom and blue at the top. So maybe something like that looks fine. And again, I'm not even going to use this for the final render. This is just to help me visualize it all when I'm rendering it. We will want some ambient occlusion later on, but we're just going to leave this for now to see how much we need. Okay, so I think for now we can go ahead and give this a test render. So it's going to be very bland and basic, but at least we're going to let's just decrease these samples since we're not going to be looking at anything important. Just want this to be as quick as we can. I'm going to speed this part up as well so you don't have to wait around. Okay, so at this point you're probably thinking, wow, that looks terrible. And yeah, you're right. Back when I first started learning Blender, or first started using Blender, I got to this point and thought, oh, this is terrible, and I'd give up and just start on something else. But it's meant to look this bad right now, and without compositing, yeah, it's not going to look perfect, but it's just to giving us an idea of what we need to change and add. So I can see the water here needs some ripples, maybe some focal blur around the edges, the chest, maybe add some planks of wood in the middle. So there's loads of things. I've got an idea now, I can see what I want. I also want to change, let's go to the world settings. Let's increase the ambient occlusion so we can have some more lights in the tunnel. So reducing the factor to 0.34, something like that should do fine. We can always increase that if we need to. Again, we want to add the treasure chest, some over there. So there's a few things we can get started with. So let's save this. I'm going to append in the treasure chest. Again, if you want to see how this was made, there's a link in the description or above. You press the I and go ahead and watch that. It's pretty simple. So you can add in the objects you want now. I'm also going to add in a barrel maybe. Again, this was created ages ago. Just reuse any objects that you've already created. If you've already made it once and you made a really good model, then why not bring it back in and reuse it in different scenes? Just maybe make some tweaks on the textures or a few differences. Here I'm just subdividing the water because we'll be needing it later on for the displacement, but I'm also just making a little dent here as if the barrel's set in the water. I don't know if it'll be seen by the camera, but every little helps, I guess. Okay, so we add this displace modifier to the water, and we're going to, again, like everything else, change it to UV. I need to unwrap this now, so go to the top view, U to unwrap. If you see here, we've got an error at the top saying that it's non-uniform scale, so you might Control A, apply the scale. Then we can unwrap it, and we get something like this. So again, add the texture, But this time we're actually going to give this a clouds texture rather than an image texture. That's pretty simple. We don't need anything too special for this, so we can just play around with the size until you find something you like. I think that should work for us. We can also reduce the strength. Yeah, that should be fine. Also make sure you smooth. Maybe bump it up, I don't know. Yeah, that should be okay. It's just so the light catches the water and it looks a lot better than a still lake, I guess. Still water. Okay, so I'm also going to add some planks of wood. It's very basic. It was actually a plank from the treasure chest. I just broke it up a little bit. I'm going to put these in here. Just adds a bit more to the scene. And also, I guess if you was a pirate, you'd want your treasure to not float away if it rolled in the water. So I guess, yeah, making a little barrier is not out of the question. Trying to think like a pirate. Okay, so I just added a bit more visual to the scene, I guess. Added something new. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, we can add in an empty, so go to Shift A, add in an empty, and this is going to control the focal blur. So you want to position that right in front of your treasure chest or wherever the object is, whatever the object is you want to focus on. Then go to the camera and we want to select limits first, make sure we're fine, the limits is perfect. Come down to the depth of field, and then we want to select the empty that we just created. If you've got more than one, it's probably best if you name them. I think I've only got two, so it'll be the second one. Yeah, that should be it. I want to change this, I want to choose f-stop, and the lower we set this number to, the more blurry everything's going to get. So let's say maybe 0.9 maybe. Actually, that's going to be way too much, so let's say 0.9. That should be enough. Again, for this scene, it will all be scene dependent. If you're working on something smaller, a different value will be needed. Okay, so I also want to increase this ambient occlusion as well. So I've gone to 0.64. And we just bring up the node editor now, see how everything's looking. Give this a render. I just want to make sure I can increase the samples now to 50 and give that a render. Okay, so it still needs a lot of work. I've noticed that the chest needs to be the material. I just need to plug the colour back in. The water might need a little bit of work as well. And don't worry about how dark it is. When we do the compositing in a minute, and also when we add some mist, everything will look a lot better. So we just want the basics. The render is going to give us what it gives us, and then we can use it and try and make it look a lot better. So the blur's working fine. When we increase the samples, all these will look better as well. When we add some ID speckle node, that'll also look better. So there are things we can do to change it. I just want to go back to this material here and fix these. Try and scale this up a little bit as well. So if we position this right in front of the water, the reflections as well, it'll add some more interest to the scene, I guess. We'll come to the camera and we want to check mist. And this will add the mist to the camera, I guess. I know you just add mist and it'll add it to the camera. Right, okay, so we're in the node setup now. We go to the scene, stop rendering it halfway through. So I also want to change my environment texture. Change it from a sky texture to an environment texture. I'll just speed this part up since I guess everyone knows how to do that. And we can also increase the strength. I want this to be quite bright, quite exposed, so maybe 2.9, 3.2. Maybe that's a bit too much, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, let's just change this back down to 2.9. Okay, so we've got our basic render, and we will need to give it another render now so we can see mist on the bottom there. We just give that a render now, Again, I'll speed this up for you so you don't have to wait around. Okay, so same thing, it was the same as before. Now we should just have some mist available to use. Why don't I see it? Okay, let's just add in our node. We need a despeckle node. We'll worry about the mist in a moment. We can plug this in. The despeckle node is probably one of the best nodes I've ever used and will ever use. It just helps it save renders, so I always use that a lot. So if you plug that in first, and we can also tweak the values. Let's set this to say 0.2, and this one's 0.6 maybe. Yep, that looks a little bit better. So I can tweak these values so you get something that works for your scene. Yeah, I want to add the mist, so you should normally see it as a thing there under the Z. I guess I didn't activate it. Thought I did. Okay, so I went to the camera and activated it, and I didn't come here to the passes. So yeah, once you've activated it on the camera, you need to come here to the passes. Click that for mist, and now you'll have a mist pass, but you'll need to re-render it since I didn't render it with a pass, so I need to do that again. So I'll render this off, I'll pause it so you don't have to wait around. So I'll do that now. Okay, so I re-rendered again. The only thing that's different is now it has a mist pass, and as you can see here, now it's plugged into the preview. Yeah, so we got some mist. Which mist looks, well, it helps sell the scene, especially when you're working on something like this. It really helps sell the scene, so it's very useful. I'm going to Shift A, add in a colour. Nope. I'm going to Shift A, add in a converter, and this is going to be a colour ramp. And with this colour ramp, what we can do is, by crushing these whites and blacks, we can actually get, we can overexpose it, or change the position of the mist, make it brighter, make it darker, do exactly what you want. And if you click the colours here and drag them down, it'll decrease it. So again, you want to play around with this value a lot once you've got your scene set up. So what we need to do is combine this with our scene. So we Shift A, we need to go to colour, go to mix, plug that in there. But actually we want to take this value here, we don't want it to be plugged into the image, take it out and plug it into the factor, and make sure this is in the preview as well so we can see what's going on. Then take the despeckle, which is our image, and plug that into the top. And in the bottom one here, we want to change this colour to whatever colour you want. Probably not bright green, but you want to change this to something maybe blue, or whatever you're seeing, whatever you're trying to go for, try and match it to that. So yeah, play around with it and maybe get some bright colours. And then now you can play with the factor of this, the ramp. Play around with it until you get something that looks a bit better for your scene. And again, just keep adding, playing around with these values until you get something you want. So I'm just going to skip ahead and I'll find something I like and then show you the result. Okay, so this is not the final image, but this is the final. This is the glow, this is the fog or the mist that I came up with. So we've got the colour ramp here, the whites all the way down to the black value. So we've got two add nodes here, they're being mixed together. Then we also have a glare node for the glow. Then also I need to add in a despeckle node again. I accidentally deleted that, so just bear with me for a second. Yes, so apologies if I'm going too fast or it's confusing, but if you just look at the setup here and just copy that, it'll work for you. These two nodes are essentially the same nodes as we had before, except I did a new one and it's being mixed together. So these two nodes are just being the mixture of the two mist values, I guess, to combine it into one. So you don't need to do that, you could have just done it with one like I did before. Glare node and changed it to fog glow, just changed it to these values here. It's not much difference, as you can see, it's only a slight difference, but I think it helps. You can also add in a filter, well, it's called filter node, and change it to soften, and sometimes this works quite well. It's not really doing much for us right here, so I probably will just delete it, but sometimes, again, depending on your scene, this will help. See, I ended up deleting that. So let's now add in our colour balance. So this is going to be the overall colour now, since we've got the background mist, which is adding some nice greens to it. We want to add some foreground colours, change everything maybe. So I like to come to this value here on gain. Just change this up to the blues. And be careful with this value, if you go too much, it'll change the image dramatically like that. It's just gone way too much into the greens. So yeah, just play around with it and move it small amounts to get something that you like. So if you mute that and you'll see the difference between before and after. It's just a touch to tie in everything. Makes it look a little bit nicer. But again, the compositing part is entirely up to you. The nodes you put onto it, how advanced you go into it, it's completely up to you. If you want a dark cave, just add an RGB curves and decrease the colours. Or if you want it quite brighter, bump it up. So just play around with it, add some more nodes until you get something that you like. So this is the result that I came up with, and then I took this into a Photoshop and added a bit of mist to the ground, so above the water. But yeah, hopefully this tutorial it helped a little bit. I know it's a long one and there's a lot more things I probably could have explained, so hopefully you did find it helpful. So yeah, hopefully it helped. If it did, be sure to give it a like. As always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.